Welcome, Jared Dietz, to the Jill Butler Experience. I am super, 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 super stoked to have you, one of my close peeps, on my podcast tonight. And we are going to be talking about so many things. How you doing,
Yes, of
Jared?
course. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I've got a lot to talk about. I certainly have a lot to share. Glad to be doing it with one of my favorite friendos in this plane that I know of. So we're just gonna shine, 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 baby.
Yes, we are. So I had a couple of ideas of things that I thought would be really wonderful that you could share because you have a lot of personal experience on it. So I thought we would start off first a little bit about our connection and how we both got connected to each other. And I feel like this kind of is a testament of our connection before birth because I think that we're very spiritual brothers and sisters, and we've done a lot of work in the ethers. And I do believe that when we first met, we kind of realized on a different level of like what our connection was. Do you remember when we first met? Do you want to tell the audience?
Sure. Yeah. Lama Namdul Rinpoche was having some things around here. The man comes from the country of Singapore, and he's been here once so far, and I hear he's coming back. He's a Lama from the Tibetan Buddhist religion, and uh, he caused a lot of people to come together and receive initiation, and part of that was the initiation of Jill and I in this life. That was like what, 8 years ago or something.
Yeah, it was darn near close to 10 years that we met, and it feels like a lifetime of way. Like it seems like so many things have happened to both of us since then that it's almost hard to go back. But I do remember your long curly hair, and I do
Mhm.
remember I think that you were I don't know, I think it was the fire puji that I remember that I met, like we met, like you knew Ron, and I'm not sure how you knew Ron, but then like I met you through Ron, I think, at that event. Was that the case? Am I remembering correctly?
The first time I remember seeing you was at sorry, I gotta silence my phone. Um, the Unity Church.
Oh,
Um, we
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sat beside each other for the Yellow Zambala initiation.
Wow, yes. Do you remember how complicated that was to speak that mantra? Oh my
Yeah,
God, Jared.
yeah. It's like doing gymnastics, like mentally and spiritually. Lots of mantras.
That was so intense.
Yeah,
That was so, so intense. But me and you were like, we got this. We're doing this.
yeah,
We didn't stop. We did everything we were told. We got right into the energy.
yeah. We took the Bodhisattva vow together.
We did. We did. And my name, and I can't remember what yours was, but my name is Radiating Sun that he gave me.
Yeah, I am Namjol Zopa, which means
Mm,
which means patience.
mm. Yes, that was such an interesting time. And
Yeah.
then we both, I think over the years, over all of our friendship, we've both really, really dove into very, very deeply into meditation. I can't tell you probably how many hundreds of times me and you meditated together, but probably outside of one or two other people, I haven't meditated more with any human being than I have with you.
Mm.
So I feel like we've done a lot of like astral traveling and a lot of traveling in our meditations. And I feel like we both have always understood and recognized how important it was to silence ourselves and to get into that stillness and that breath.
It's an access point for sure. You go everywhere with that. So silence is a beautiful thing, and it's so exciting sometimes too, because sometimes it's not just silence there when you go into deep retreats. You find an expansive superimposed world of realities that all encounter this one in a really perfect way, and it's all yourself, you know. So I think we all have to go there. It's our duty, whether we like it or not, to be in touch with ourself. You know, people run from it and they seek the pleasure in this and the tastes of that, but it's really like just a waiting game, because eventually they're going to come back around. Maybe this life, maybe next, but I'm glad you and I caught on early on in this life, and um,
We certainly did. And I think we've meditated in so many different places. Even in my parents' basement when I was temporarily living there.
absolutely, yeah. Anywhere you can. I feel like I'm meditating now. Like
Yeah, like in a
like
permanent meditate. I think I do believe when you've been meditating for many, 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 many years and you've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing it, I do believe that you kind of automatically are then like muscle memory in a meditative state. I do
I think
believe that you create a meditative state.
I think that's the goal. I think that's one of the purposes of all the asanas and yoga. You know, you get used to that meditative state in various positions, and even some of the obscure kriyas that people do. It's like they're just trying to bring God into everything. You know, like they come up with these ways that, like, to them seem like a pathway inwards and a pathway to that source. And it's not necessarily sitting their eyes closed and silent. Like they may be doing heavy breathing, or, you know, all of the different types of movement that they do. Um, so yeah, I'm eager to explore those things when they come up. But for me, like silent meditation is enough. You know, it just feels like it's just so rich. And maybe I have some merit from other lives that makes it more rich or easier for me in some way than for some other people. But I do believe that everyone can do it, and like to build that process is a really important thing. It's a really liberating thing. It makes you feel less
Well,
stuck in.
I'm glad that we're talking about meditation because I wanted to segue into something on your personal path that I feel is very, very connected to this. And I don't know how many people would really agree with that. And it's probably kind of a taboo kind of connection. But I do believe those that do travel in the ethers, both through meditation and other places, and even through maybe psychedelics or other ways that they go off outside of their bodies at times. I do think that many of them get I wouldn't say I don't want to say lost, but I would say that they go in places and then they have a more tricky time coming back into their bodies. And unfortunately or fortunately, everything's the way you look at it. People create these ideas and these stories of mental illness, and I think that um, the stories that you've gone through, and I want you to talk a little bit about that from your perspective and maybe your first recount of the things that you've gone through, how you've kind of traveled in and out of different realms and realities and had to be put in these boxes that other humans wanted to put you in, and call things different things and label you different things. And some of that, I understand, for lack of better understanding. People do the best they can on this planet with the way that they handle things. In this particular situation, I feel like we're still in an unfortunate point of how we're handling this, because I don't think it's the right way that we're handling it. But anyways, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that and maybe like share with people, like, what your diagnosis is, what you've had to go through, and just in your own words, like how you feel about it all.
Well, it's a tricky subject because it has many points of view. Everybody's intersects and overlaps, and it's hard to determine what's what and whose is whose. But in my own experience, I've found that the opportunities that I had to explore myself, like through the lens of being mentally ill in someone else's eyes, has afforded me a great amount of personal reflection and disillusion of certain ego constructs that were forming like pointy, uncomfortable angles in my personality and in my view of the world. Um,
So let's be clear with people and tell people what the label is.
I've had a few labels. We could go down a rabbit hole of talking about labels and how they can pigeonhole people in weird ways, and like it's too bad in my opinion, like how.
I agree, and that's kind of why I wanted you to talk about this because I want a perspective that is a little broader, well, a lot broader in my opinion. I want a perspective that's through your lens because I feel like you have a lot of understanding and I think there's something to be said from the bridge of spirituality and so-called mental illness, and I just was kind of thinking maybe there was some way that you could bring that understanding to, you know, my viewers because I feel
Yeah,
like it's such a taboo subject. I do, if you would be comfortable talking about what it's called, fine. If you're not, I totally accept that as well. It just might give people a better framework that are outside of this realm looking in that might want to, you know, hear what you have to say that are going through similar things with similar labels.
yeah, of course. So there's many labels. Just to name a few, that not all the ones I have had, but you know, you have depression, you have the bipolar and schizophrenia, and all of the labels are just Western society's best way of looking for a solution. And in the past, they had no idea what to do with it, and people would end up in dungeons and in cages thinking they were possessed. Maybe they were, but either way, we've come a long way. You know, like now we have another path forward. So I don't want to completely demonize the system that we live in the Western society. Before I get into my personal journey with the labeling, I've understood through research that there's a lot of uh, worldly cultures that don't look at it the same way, and those people who are having breakthroughs, as I would rather call them, um, would encounter someone like a shaman. They bring that person to a local shaman, and the shaman, being versed in both this world and the others, could easily diagnose and shake some rattles and do these ceremonies and bring them through some medicine work and pop them out on the other side as a new budding shaman. So those people are looked at oftentimes as the ones to lead the culture forward. You hear about this especially in like Amazonian cultures. But my labels that I've been given by this society, specifically this mental health institutionalization, are I started out, they called me a paranoid schizophrenic. And this was like when I turned 21, like 2011. Um, they didn't know what was going on. So they just like threw a bunch of like.
Isn't isn't that, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I think that's very ironic because the shifting of the planet, we supposedly back in 2011 and then 2012 is when this big shift happened on the planet with energies. So I just find that really interesting that that was pretty much simultaneously with that time frame. But anyways, go on with your story. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, it's all connected for sure. I am definitely a sensitive being, and when these changes happen, I'm right there with them. Oftentimes in the middle of them.
Yes, you are.
Uh,
Yes, you
so
are.
so I enjoy this though. Now looking back, I can say these things that are pretty critical and look at it with happiness because I know where it brought me. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have evolved the way I did unless I had gone through mental illness. Um, I call it a breakthrough again. But I did have another couple of diagnoses. They fit me into the box of, then they were like, well, this ain't right. We're going to call them a schizoaffective disorder. And then they were like, this ain't right. We're going to call them bipolar type 1. So that's the manic type. Um, and that one, in my opinion, based on what I know of the book that they read for all this stuff, which is just getting larger and larger and larger. But anyways, they keep trying to find ways to diagnose these things. It's crazy. But again, they're doing their best. And my diagnosis of bipolar type 1 manic is I guess I could say it suits me the most, because if there's any one thing that would lead to a chaotic disorder, like where it literally feels like disorder, where I don't even know who's who, I don't even know what, how to take care of myself anymore. It gets scary, you know. I hear from people afterwards like how scary it was for them, and it's shameful at times. But I realized like that was just my process. Like that's just what the universe had me going through in order to become what I am becoming still. And so my my bipolar type 1 disorder describes the way that in the past I've had um, a unique interaction internally to uh, disorganized, like I wasn't keeping myself organized, so I would become disorganized, but it would like become, I would grow as I um, stopped taking care of myself. And by
System
taking,
breakdown.
yeah, it was just a slow thing. And the most recent times that I've been in the mental hospital were after festivals. And um,
Sleep, no food.
yeah, I would become stimulated to a point where I couldn't sleep. And that was really the crucial thing, was sleep. Um, Sleep is super important in order to give the brain and the whole person time to settle and reintegrate, to come away from the things that it doesn't need, and to 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 really mesh with things that it does, in terms of belief and in terms of whatever. So I wasn't doing that reset. I At first it was just like, oh, it's okay, I got like 6 hours, and it was like, oh, I'm so stimulated, I can't really sleep, and I'm trying to sleep, but I had caffeine earlier and I don't know what's going on, and then you don't get any sleep. And after like 2 or 3 days of that, stuff gets weird, to the point where you start to question, why is this happening? Why is that happening? More specifically, like, what are the intentions behind this person? And you start to there you had known them as a genuinely good person, but like suddenly this haywire belief strikes, and you might think that they're a rapist or something, they're out to get you or whatever, and it can be someone very close to you. So it really stirs things up in terms of where the ego is at and how the ego is able to process. And when you have a long time in the hospital after that, maybe a month or so to process, that processing, um, as long as you're on a spiritual path trying to understand things from that lens still, maybe otherwise, but for me, it becomes a real proving ground, because you're in there with all sorts of
Yeah,
amazing, scary
let's talk
people.
about that. Let's talk about that, because I remember, because I've been through a few of these with you, like in contact with you. And I remember at least one of the times, and I think it was maybe the second one that I had gone through with you, the time that me and Mikey were with you and helped you. And I believe it was that time that I remember, I didn't know it at the time, but after it was all said and done, because I think that was the longest you were in there, I think that you had told me they had given you so many different things that you were like it was like you weren't even like a human anymore because there was you
Yeah.
had they injected you with so many different things, and that's part of like that's part of where I have a disconnect with the way the system works with these things, because just like you, I think they're trying to do their best at times, and I'm not judging the whole medical system, but I am saying that I do think that there's just a standard that isn't human in some of these situations.
Yeah.
And I want to hear like how you feel, like I want to hear more about that, situation if you want to talk about it.
I'll talk about it for you, Jill.
I just think I just think it's really important that people understand all the levels of these things and like how like you survive them, because I think it's good to have a lens of like positivity and understanding a bigger picture in the spiritual sense of all this. That's really important. I'm always on the same page with you about that. But I also feel like there needs to be a realness about how the system is kind of broken and how you had to witness that and go through things because of it. And it's just something I think that needs to be more understood and heard.
Yeah. Well, we all live our destiny, and some of us need to check out the underbelly of the mental health system.
And
And
that's what you chose to do, right? That was part of your story.
yeah, man, went through there waving my flag high. But I mean, to be realistic, it's an institution that's like many of the people in there truly believe this is the best they can do to help people. And they believe that they're essentially in that way doing God's work. They're like bringing these people in off the streets, offering them food and a place to sleep. In my case, it was free because I was on Medicaid at the time, so I didn't pay anything, and I got to stay in this like hotel for a month or more. And granted, I didn't get to do all the things I would love to do, but it was like still, I think they're doing a pretty good job. And
Well, I think you're saying that now, and I appreciate your words now. But I think if you would have talked to you like I did after the situation, you didn't have the same kind of feelings about it. But I'm not saying that both of those feelings aren't valid, because this is your story and this is how you feel. And so you deserve to frame it in whatever way you want. I'm just remembering from my own experience with you all the things that you told me after you had those experiences, and a lot of them were really, 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 really challenging.
yeah, they were challenging. And I'm not going to deny that afterwards I held a lot of resentment for some time about it and felt very slighted
Violated.
slighted
Yeah.
by a system that I thought was taking something away from me. I thought they could take away my spirituality and they could dull me down with these medications and force me to be just one of the pack, again in the sheep, the flock, like uh but I've proven to myself again and again that that can't happen. Um I've come off of really heavy drugs only to be put on like progressively littler and littler doses, and showing through my own self work and my own finding my own integrity repeatedly and like like shaking it all up. I was able to harmonize with myself inwardly in a way. I do believe that these mental health issues come from a deeply seated place that we manifest based on how we want to create our upbringing and how we want to create our uh, our relationships and what happens to us at this point in time and what happens to us at that point in time. So the dominoes fall, and in my case, I ended up in a mental institution. Some people don't have to go through that for their own growth, but I know for myself, that whole story was a part of me cracking open my eggshell to be able to walk out. And while I did have some drugs that I was put under at a time to stabilize myself, I also was able to find a lot of reflection through that. And it was painful at times. It was really painful and scary. Sometimes there's people in those institutions that are like chaotic and haywire, and they'll throw a punch. Like you don't know what's going on. They're drooling, they're cross-eyed, I don't know, whatever. Like
Yeah.
it can be literally scary, and they have to like shut down the hall because so and so is going berserk, and like can't walk out of your room. Um,
Do you feel like in some ways that like it made you feel like crazier than you actually felt like when you when you first came in there? I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to place myself in that in that state, and I know obviously that your state wasn't in a balanced state to begin with, so you might not even be able to have a an honest answer about that.
yeah, after being manic and encountering a more schizophrenic delusional space, being in that space with others who are also not right in their head, it does sort of keep the soccer ball kicking. It's like you just like there's what does that mean? What is that? Oh my God, are they saying this to me for this reason? Am I somehow this role? Am I a X? Am I a Y? What is life? So I think that's why people stay in there so long, is because while they do have
Can't get
some
out of
place
that
to
loop.
slow down, some place to slow down and like collect themselves, they're trying to do that around a cacophony of extremely delusional people that can't barely think straight for themselves. And
So I guess in in your opinion and from your experience, where do you think all that stems from? So we both agree that we choose our experiences and we choose our suffering, so to speak. We both kind of are from that same standpoint of thinking, which I already know about you. But like, what would you say is the underlining reasoning for going through it multiple times in your life? If you had to really sit down and try to mentally break it down to any sort of understanding as far as your reflection, your spirituality, like all the tools that you have that help you process through this life that we're in, what would you say is the bottom line baseline reason for having these situations happen a few times?
well, I think while one time in there can sort someone out in a certain way and help to create a level of balance and a new structure within the ego, maybe any fractures within the persona can be, start to mend. Certain things can be let go of, like relationships and beliefs about this or that, past things and the world. But sometimes, I mean, number one, it's mistakes in caring for oneself. Like had I made sure to get my sleep consistently through the festivals where I was becoming too far strung, I would have been in a better place. So I think number one is like doing the self work to know yourself enough and understand how to take care of this vehicle. I think that's extremely important. And
And
I don't.
for somebody that is sensitive like yourself, that's already conditioned for like going in the ethers at will, maybe not for you specifically, those precautions and those measures need to be taken. So more
Yeah.
sleep, eating better, um, having a certain amount of rest and calmness in your in your uh in your surroundings.
And knowing how to notice that, like knowing how to say, okay, I've been lit up for long enough, even though it feels good. It might feel good, but I needed to go like put this thing to sleep. Like, let's go. Okay, Jared, like carry yourself out there. Really, like you don't want to sometimes. And anybody can make these mistakes, but I've been prone to it. And I think the reason I've been in there multiple times is because it was a honing process. I was honing myself down to become the version that would be stable in the right ways. From a very creator type point of view, the perspective that I see is that like I needed to like whittle myself, and you don't get it all in one time sometimes, like
And do you think too that your ego, when you're in these states of like really, really far out places, like when you're not starting not to get sleep and you're just really out there with the music and the experience and the people, do you think your ego somewhat was in charge of like, oh, I'm fine. I don't, it doesn't matter what I do. I'll be fine.
well,
Do you think now maybe you're more like disciplined and like shutting that part of yourself down and saying like, no, this is what I'm going to do?
yeah, well, I was disciplined before in some ways. Like I had certain practices in place, not in the beginning, but like recently, but definitely I was, um, like instead of my ego saying, "Oh, I noticed this about Jared. He needs to go to sleep," I would identify with this limitless being, which I am, to the point that I would choose not to do that because I could. I could choose not to do that. I could choose like, oh, it's gonna
Just
be okay. Oh, yeah, I didn't get that much sleep. So what? Not knowing. So it's just a lack of. Again, I wasn't honed down into that ability yet. It's not like hadn't unlocked that code. Like
right.
I was still out there being just as spiritual in every way. God is God, right? Like is flowing through me, but I do think that the like the plane the planes that intersect, which all correlate to make a person, when you shine God's light through them, it will portray a certain shape, color, etc. Well, I had not worked enough to adjust my shape so that it could be stable, and form a picture that was more reflective of what was coming into it. I did still have ego junk and persona
Do you think
stuff.
too, do you think too, like either the use of marijuana or being around marijuana also may have, triggered some places? Because I do know that it is thought that any marijuana use for anybody that has certain ones of these stories that we're talking about, it can trigger it can trigger some sort of episode. And what do you think about all that?
I think it depends on the person. I think we're all made differently, but I do think that for me, I don't need to use any drugs because I'm already high as F. I just I just elude and exude like that kind of light that does make me, and I've heard other people feel really good too around me, but like it makes me feel high. Like I don't need that. Like the marijuana for me takes me too far, and I don't think that the marijuana alone was the problem. Had I gotten sleep enough, then
Hmm.
I probably would have been just fine. But not sleeping, uh, I think, was the predominant thing, and the marijuana use for me in the past has brought me out to a place that was farther than I needed to be. Like it can be a tool, it can be a shamanic thing for some people. I don't need that. I already go there. That to me is just like it's like why use a shotgun to open a can of soup? You can use a can opener.
So I there I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but I think it was when you went to Peru and you had that, because that was the time that I remember I was first brought into this story with you when you were away in another country. And I just remember you having some really like out of body experience. And I feel like that particular story that you went through, and I know there probably was some substances used at that point in time, but I do believe that that out of body experience you had took you to a place that you couldn't come back for that particular situation, that particular circumstance. Because I remember you very vividly telling me about that experience you had on the beach. I don't know if you want to talk about it with everyone, but I know it was really powerful for you.
Yeah, I think my whole trip to South America was really powerful. Um, I think one of the highlights for me was being in Peru, being in uh, Puno on Lake Titicaca at first,
Mhm.
and experiencing that energy, super holy and high and activating. I've been told by a shaman woman from Bolivia that I she told me affirmatively that I was an Incan king in a past life, and so that's like that would be my turf down there. So for me going down there and being in that space was extremely activating and like brought me way deep into my soul, into my purpose, and just like shot me into this like it's weird. It was like simultaneously reflective and like beaming at the same time, like mode. I felt like when I was walking down there, like I was glowing. Um, Nowadays, I feel like that because I did a lot of work on myself, but and I can bring it anywhere. But at that point, it was like, wow, this is like I've never felt this before in this life. So Peru had me going, and then soon after Peru, I flew out of there and went out to Panama for a music festival.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
that was Panama. Yeah, okay, that was where. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was on the beach, and it was a party. It was raucous. Like people were drinking. Like I thought it was going to be this nice spiritual tribal gathering, as it's called, but it was raucous, man. Like it was hard to find center, and things happened that felt beyond my control at the time. Like for my human person, my ego, and I found myself without any of my things because someone up and took and left with them. I had made an encampment with someone, left my stuff in there, and I went around to go do some things, and I came back and everything was gone. And it was this big festival with long down the beach, like full of all kinds of people. I couldn't find it, and I was just wandering at that point, and it was all divine, perfect, because I was already like in that like all is holy, all is well state. But I was like, well, this probably sucks. And I did have my hammock, so I set my hammock up right on the beach and slept in there for like the first 2 nights before shit got weird. But I did. I smoked some weed on the first day. I think it was like really crappy weed. I don't even know. It might have been laced with something. It made me feel all sorts of strange. Could have been just weed, and I was just in a state. I could have been in a state, but life expanded at that moment, and I felt bigger than life, and like everything was like coming at me was just like God's good glory, and I was just ready for it. And the only thing was I was getting lost in that and not getting food for myself, not drinking enough, and not taking care of the things that are still very much me, which is the parts of myself that are human. I'm not in my rainbow body yet. Like I don't have that all activated, you know? Like if I get to that point, one day I'll let all you know. I'll give you all of you a telepathic message saying, I'm here, here's my hand, come on with me. And that'll happen someday. Maybe not in this life. I don't know. Maybe it will. But I was along that beach, and at one point, yeah, it was like the next day, so I wasn't high from the weed anymore. I was just, high on being engaged and being real and in spirit, like fully in spirit, and maybe from not eating and stuff. But at one point in time, I remember I was just like walking around, and I stopped at this like little bungalow thing, and I was just like, looking off, and then all of a sudden everything went poof, like reality itself had disappeared. All there was awareness, and all I could perceive was pure black. There was no color, no anything, and I had no body, but I was fully aware, and I'd gone from like it was like one state to another, and it was like I don't know how long I was like that or whatever, and then it switched completely over, and then boom, and like I still had no body and everything, but it was like pure white, and everything felt full, and it was like there was nothing and there was everything at the same time, and I realized how like emptiness and void and blackness is the same exact thing at the very root of it as the ever-ending, never-ending light on
Right,
the other end. It's the
right,
same exact thing.
right.
And then I came out of that state, and I was like, and I looked at somebody who was nearby, and I was like, come here, I need to show you something. And I don't know what happened after this for him, but I put my hand on his head and my thumb on his third eye, and I went and disappeared again. It was the strangest thing, but I feel like that's what we all can live like. If we do it in a good way, we can sustain these ultra cosmic states. And I don't mean to sound kooky when I say this. It's ultimately the earth is our oyster, and the clouds are our cream, and we are the majestic ones here to weave the stories. And we can weave any darn story we damn well please. So I did. I was on that beach, and I was totally the fool. The fool in the tarot. Like I was the fool. Like totally ready to just walk off that mountain, like with my little puppy dog. Like I had no fears. Like I was just in it. And then weird things came up. Like because I wasn't sleeping, I and
The
eating very
paranoia
much.
started to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, like things like the weird noises would like get me weird. Like I heard a noise that sounded like a chainsaw. I'm like, what's that? Like or I see someone doing a certain thing a certain way, and I'm like,
Yeah, I remember you telling me that like after all this bliss and all these things that you just talked about, you went into a place that was like it was very dark. It was like very ritualistic, and you felt like there was like really, really, really dark. And I mean, you could have actually gone into like a different timeline and saw something from like a different timeline. And I'm wondering if all of that because of the state you were in and because of the your body being in a not a good state, you were very susceptible to something, to an
yeah,
experience. And so I think that you brought on that experience, whether it was a real experience or a timeline or whatever it was, it doesn't really matter. But I remember it was like terrifying to you.
yeah, it became really terrifying, and eventually I got out of there. But it didn't happen before I got tackled down and strapped down with rope to a gurney and hauled out of there. I didn't do anything to deserve that. I don't think. I remember what happened, and there were many people throughout the event walking and swimming naked on the beach. I was naked on the beach, and somehow they made a big deal out of that.
Something that
People,
Jared Dietz likes to do, darn it.
I am naked always. I just sometimes have clothes over top of it. I'm always naked.
everybody that knows you knows that that's a thing. Like you are definitely a nudist by heart. Like you would literally live this whole life nude if you could. And
Yeah,
that's just something that you feel strongly in your heart. And it has nothing to do with sexuality or anything to do with anything like that. It's just purely like the way that you feel you should exist. And we're not there as a society, but we do have enough people on the planet that do like to partake in those stories, as you know.
totally. There's really great opportunities to get together with people that are that way too, and would pursue that goal of experiencing you as a godly person, even though you're without clothes. I have a good time doing it. There's a festival up here called Sentient Fest that happens every year, and I recommend it if you're in the New York area and you want to check some out. That's very body positive and caters to all types. So that's my little plug for them. Go to Sentient.
But also it's also very proactive to tell everybody like this year, like I want to just say to everybody and let everyone know like you made it through a really tough season, because this is the season that anytime you've ever had any issues, it's always come around this time. And you've kept yourself in very good standing and balance and done a lot of work to keep yourself healthy and sleeping and eating and doing all kinds of things. And you actually went to a gathering that we both went to recently. And it was the Lionsgate gathering that Theo had. And you did DJing, and you did sound, and you did a lot of stuff, work related for that gathering. And you knew you had to go home and sleep, and you did. And
Yeah, that's good.
so yeah, but you partook in the fun, and you took care of yourself at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
So
So,
that was a good story for all of us. We all had so much fun at that gathering. Getting ready to have a recap video with Theo soon when he has some time to talk about the post stories after the gathering.
yeah, that'll be good. I always have fun at gatherings. Just sometimes in the past, I've just been willy nilly. I haven't had a really mature, grounded state of being, and I was always going for that. Like that's what I was always looking for without knowing it. But I was just in it for like the willy nilly fun, like ready to just rock out and hang out with my tongue out, like like
Yeah, with my tongue out.
totally, totally ready.
Yeah, you've made a lot of tremendous shifts in your life this year already so far, Jared. Like, you have this job that you just landed, what, a month ago? Was it a month now?
Yeah, a little over a month.
And that's a really cool job, and you got your place in Ithaca now, and being the super daddy next to Miss Super Mommy Jessie.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had so many you've had quite a journey. And how old are you now? I should know this, but my mind is not a steel trap, and I do forget ages.
I'm 33 years young.
Yes. 33. That I should have remembered that, because 3 is such a powerful number for me. Um, yeah. So it's so funny to me because you're so much older in wisdom to me that I can never keep track of your age.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've had epochs together, Jill. We've I mean, age is just kind of a funny thing to even
I know, right?
like, I really don't think in those terms. I like a maturity level, but I always see through that to their real soul. If if they're not just distracting me with foolishness. But yeah, sometimes people do. Sometimes it's like you could see their soul, but like all they're doing is just acting amok and being, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give it a real adjective, but
Yeah, it's a lot of disguises. and a lot of falseness and a lot of inauthenticity. One of the reasons why I started this podcast, and I think this is my 11th one, is I wanted to both offer my own authenticity and as far as being vulnerable and being able to be in a place of sharing more of myself, because I feel like a lot of people know me, but a lot of people don't know me. And that's not because I'm ever hiding or ingenuine. It's just that I spend so much time holding other people's energy that I haven't given a lot of time to share my own. And so this podcast is truly to be able to share my own and simultaneously share everyone else's. And so I think this is a ripe time on planet Earth for people to start getting really freaking real and really truthful on who they are and what their purpose is. I think
Absolutely.
me I think me and you have a pretty good gauge on our own purpose and why we're here, and we've always pretty much known that, even though we've had our distractions. We have always known our purposes of why we're meant to be here and help usher in the energies of these now moments that we're going through. In your personal opinion, where do you see things going on the planet in the next few years?
I think there's still a lot that needs to be honed by the collective culture before there's any real change that leads to the lifestyle that we would all live comfortably in. I think I think there are some key things that need the pin pulled from under them in order to just let it fall. And doing that is really easy and simple when you look at it from a lens of being a God incarnate being here on planet Earth and not thinking of things in terms of what your hands and feet can do, but in terms of like what you as a creator with your lens deep inside yourself, holding the matter of fact as you see it and giving it heart and a healthy amount of intuitional kick. Um, so what I see in the next few years uh, involves a lot of people making big mistakes that they need to learn from. Specifically, those people who are in more of a, they would like to think of themselves as caretakers. Like, oh, the people don't know enough. They need to be herded. But we know them today as more so as obstinate creatures. Some people would use a really bad word to call them. I won't say that here. But they need to fess up for their mistakes. And by fess up, I guess what I really mean is life has afforded them a lot of material offerings. And I think it's time that spirit gets in their way a little bit more. And we are spirit, and we can do that just with our intention. And because we're doing it to protect the flock in an actual upright way, because we know what will come then afterwards when they're removed from their seat that they created, we will I would rather gain no karma. I'm not really in it for the karma, but we would probably gain some good karma rather than bad karma. I don't think, like, if you swat a fly, do you get bad karma? I don't know. It's been bothering the whole room full of people and you do the good thing. So that's what I see. I see what I'm creating. There's going to be a lot of rough roads though, because like as these sort of old collaborators pattern themselves out of infinity in this lifetime, like Just kind of
That's a good way of putting it, patterning themselves out. I like that. That's really good.
we can rejoice subtly as we know that what's coming to us is a reflection of the yell, like I'm losing my millions and billions and trillions of bad ideas. We're really doing them a favor if we just like wipe if you wipe a kid's face with a wet paper towel, sometimes they get upset, but you're doing them a favor. So we shouldn't be upset about their point of view about it. Like we are the kingdom come and we will get this shit done. So that's how I'm seeing it.
We came here for this, Jay. We came here for this. We
Absolutely.
definitely
And
came
it's
here for this.
easy. It's so easy when you get out of the way, like and let yourself just be that. Be the notion of peace and be the trust and be everything that gets you forward to believing that you can do something about something without actually having to pick up your hands. Like you are the magnetic force. You are a collaborative unit. Like the oneness speaks through us.
Just the essence of being in a body with light is doing your job. Just being on this planet right now and being in your wholeness and your light and letting it shine is the magic. Of course, we want to lead by example through our behaviors of kindness, compassion, peace, divine neutrality. Those are things we want to wear as we walk through the earth. But our light alone, unhindered and untouched, is actually simultaneously bringing up the collective consciousness of planet Earth. And if people could just live in that fashion of just being that light, not having to worry about being something special. There's not a special job, a special organization, a special hat you wear, a special outfit you wear, a special income you get. None of those things are real. Just simply being the light inside the body and shining through example. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, you'll heal that way. Other people will heal that way. If you can get deep enough in through the thickness of delusion that the people at the top are living in that keep things under control, if you can get in there and shine that deep and that bright, go for it, and that will heal as well. So you're right. The that's the
Well, the
healing.
way I see it is it's already happened and we're just catching up to it. I believe all of the light has won the battle. We're just in, it's such a slow process because there's so much 3D still. We're still going from 3D to 4D to 5D. We're still energetically moving, and there's so many people in all different places, but we're already there. We just haven't seen it yet. It hasn't caught up yet with us.
Yeah,
And it will.
as I
It'll
say,
catch up.
this whole space here, what we this stuff is the artifact of what had been done spiritually already.
And
Always,
that's exactly what I try to explain to people. But because of where people are at in their minds, they can't process. It's very, very hard for many people to process through those words. So alls we can hope through these videos, through our conversation, and because we work through our throat chakras, that the codes will take people to the next level of themselves when they watch because they won't
absolutely.
understand exactly what we mean by that. That's a very, very future thinking concept to understand.
Yeah. Some spiritual masters, I pick up a YouTube video and I look at it and I'm there for like 2 seconds and I already like, whoa, like I feel totally better. Thank you. That's all it takes. So
No, because it's their vibration and it's their codes because it's very little to do with what they say. It's more to do with the codes that are coming through their mouth
yeah,
that are like unlocking codes in you and helping you remember what you already know. Because it's all inside and you already know it. It's just a matter of opening it back up to yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It
It's
becomes fun at
powerful
that point.
stuff.
It's like digging for gold. It's like, oh, it's just
Yeah,
so
I think
easy. It's so easy and fun.
I think both of us also have spent a good amount of time around gurus in this lifetime to know and feel like the difference between energies of people that have a vibrational energy that's very high. Like I know you've met Amma a bunch of times, right?
Yeah.
I have not met Amma, but I've had many friends that have have an experience with her. And I've met Saima multiple times. And and there's other people that we've connected to that have had very, very high vibrations. But it is a whole different realm when you're in their interface, when you're in their space. It's a whole different experience. Just being around them makes you feel lighter.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember when I got my hug from mom, I totally, she enveloped me and I felt the wholeness of her being, AKA the being, the one being we all are. It felt incredible. And when I was like lifted off of her, because I was like so delirious after that, it was incredible. I felt the pain of being separated from my mother, like for the first time, like the first, like, okay, at the hospital or whatever. I felt that same pain, and I totally felt like a memory to me. It wasn't like just right there. I
Or
was like,
you went
this is
right
a
back to
memory.
it.
Yeah, I was like, how am I remembering this? But it's just was such a visceral and impressionable thing. And
Didn't you go with our friend that's no longer alive, Chris Bowers once?
I think so.
I think you went with Chris
With
Bowers once in Ganapate.
I want to say yes. Yeah, I don't remember who I was
Emily.
with that time. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure I went there twice, and I only got a hug one time.
it's so funny because I wanted to get there with you guys at least one of those times that you went, and for some reason I couldn't. And then 2020 happened, and then she stopped. And I was like, oh man, because like I missed it. Because I was like, it was like the year before that I was gonna try to go, and I didn't make the time in my schedule to do it. But yeah, because she kept coming to New York City. I think it was in New York City, right?
Yeah,
She kept coming to. What I do know, I don't know if you've checked out online if you're connected to any of her stuff, but Saima has been doing darshan online a bunch, and I wanted to know one day if how I would feel, like what kind of shakti I would get from watching it, and I got quite a bit of shakti from just watching it.
nice.
Yeah, so that's you should tune into that when you get a chance.
So all we have to do is be that. Be Saima, be Ama. There you
Mhm.
go. World problem solved.
Problem solved. Just step into the space and be it. I know, because they're just external visions of ourselves. They're just pieces of us. Every person that we have outside of ourselves is just a fractal of ourselves, and how we're choosing to see ourselves. And so it's incredible, but it's such a like paradox because it's like we understand this in concept and we even understand it in the way that we behave and the way that we be, but we live in such a world that everything is so external that it's so hard at times to not get pulled into it, like the external.
Well, the external is only there for support. Gotta stop drawing into it as if it's everything.
Very
It's there
true.
for like an extra kickback to be like, now I can rest from all my spiritual duties. I feel like people got it backwards.
I know what they do, but I think there's enough of us at this point that are really, pointing that arrow back inside. And I even noticed like on social media, I see a lot more, pointing back inside from different teachers and, influencers and people that are like holding space for light. I see a lot more like pointing back inside.
I mean, pretty soon it's going to be the only way available here. So
I
anyone else,
know.
any other
I
souls that
know. That's so
unfortunately don't make the
true.
cut, any other souls that unfortunately don't make the cut are going to just be, left behind to experience another incarnation at the same level that they were at, while the rest of us that are on the earth as it ascends and don't choose to tap out, we're going to actually be living it and living in that vibration, and our only source of information will really be from spirit, and we'll be living here to celebrate that and to revel in that, and to learn to hone that and to adjust ourselves so that we can be better conduits for that. I mean, that's the life that is coming. We're on the ascending path. It's literally the only thing. If you want to jump off the ship, now's the time to do it. We're about to
Yeah,
go.
don't invite people to do that.
Hey, I don't care what they do. Honestly, it's their ego that is in the way. If they're in that position, and if they were to be hurt by what I say, I don't really
No,
care.
people have,
I'm
that's the thing about this place. That's the thing about Earth is you have freedom of choice, and to me, the choiceless choice is to be here and to hold the light. Like that's the choiceless choice for me. For other people, I can't say what it's going to be for them. I do know the older generations are going to jump ship because the changes are going to be so significant. And so, some of the older generations it's going to be challenging for them. Um, but it's always the choice.
It's a matter of people's karma too. Some of
Yeah.
us on the path are just younger souls. It's not a shameful thing. It's just a matter of where you fit in the pattern, and when the limit is struck, you'll get tugged along by everybody that is still going up, but I really don't think it's going to matter much. You're still the people that go and don't ascend in that same way will just have to be okay with it because they're still moving forward. You can't go backward. You're still a soul evolving and learning and growing through time if you choose to. But for those of us who choose to like exit the time paradigm and let time be a fun thing we can play around in, but not be the thing that is ours to be and behave like. We don't have to be timely people. That's bullshit. Like what the heck are we trying to do? Like delude ourselves? I'm not here to delude myself. I'm here to like extricate myself from the things that would set me apart from my own true, essential, dignified, meaningful, resolute, pristine. Ah,
Oh my goodness. This has been a really good talk, I feel like we've gone in a whole bunch of different directions. Um, is there anything maybe you want to share with people about your future endeavors as far as like your DJing or anything that you think you're going to be stepping into in the near future that you want people to look out for you?
yeah. There's plenty of stuff. I've got Reiki going on.
Oh yeah, talk to us about you're going to be doing that at Jesse's salon,
Yep.
Luna Love.
Luna Love Holistic Hair Studio. I think I'm gonna do that for a while. I just started it in terms of making myself available. I don't have any clientele yet, and I anticipate because she has a good client base that she might kick some of her clients over to me that would be interested. So I imagine I'll get at least like two or three people a week. But I'm making myself available on Sundays. And also, I mean, I don't know if how anybody who doesn't know me already would be able to find me. I don't know if they don't have my Instagram or my Facebook or whatever, but maybe they do. Anyways, we're gonna be able to connect. Like whoever you are out there, if you feel to, then there will
And
be
they
an
can connect
opportunity.
through my page and through me if they want to get in touch with you. Most people, we know most of the same people, but if it's anybody outside of our friendship group, they can get through to me and to get through to you, and I'll give them your information. But yeah, like so the Reiki thing, and Jared does have a magical hand. Like he is very good with his touch, and one of the things I think both of us have always shared with each other is our Reiki energy touch. Like we've always been like me and you together have always been really like powerful with that. But I feel like we haven't like tried to promote that or tried to use that. It's more of like something we've just shared with people. And but it Jared is very good at it.
So yeah, I'll be doing that. I do a lot of like connecting people to their higher self that have a weak connection, and establishing a firm boundary layer around them so that like the nucleus of who they are can really gel and start to like pulsate in there and open up. I cut cords. That's easy to do, but I do it, and it's a nice thing for people that don't have any idea about this stuff. Like they'd be like, oh, I don't know how he did it, but I feel so good. And that's exactly what we're here for. We're here to help each other out. So this is like not a poo relationship. We're not doing power over others. Nuh-uh. We're doing the all together kind of thing. Like we're working together. We gotta each take a spoon and feed the next guy. Like we're all working together. So
Paying it forward always.
yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I love that, and I also would love if anybody wants to get together with me to do some type of earth gridding. Like we could do a meditation together and set up some nice pillars of light, and expose some things that are fun to expose that we shouldn't be, but we are anyways because that's what we do. And it's
Linda,
gonna
Linda, who I had on before my last podcast, she travels around the country and does a bunch of grid work.
nice. I do
Yeah.
it for my little throne back there, my little Zafu pillow. I sit there and do it. I don't really go anywhere. But the other day, I actually took some crystals that I had. They're just like little tiny ones, and I had a whole bag of them, and I was just like driving around intuitively through Ithaca and just like throwing them out my windows, like just like okay, this is where they're gonna go. I don't know. I may
Throwing
just
them or
be
energetically?
I may just be a fairy, but I was having fun with it. So
Were you physically throwing them or were you
I was
energetically throwing
literally
them?
throwing little handful of crystals
You were.
that
That's
that I
funny.
yeah like my magic stardust I throw,
Oh.
and I DJ
Yeah,
too, so I'll be
yeah. You
DJing
you
an
d you
ecstatic
have been
dance.
DJing. Like how many Thursdays a month are you doing it at Foundation
Uh,
Flight?
like once a month.
Yeah. And so
It's
that's a
fun.
stat for anybody that doesn't know what that is. It's an ecstatic dance um session, and he DJs the music for that ecstatic dance, and it's at the Foundation of Light in Ithaca, New York. So if anybody that's from around here, and you want to go, get in touch with me and I can point you in the right direction to get involved in all that information. It's really nice and it's really freeing, and something that it's getting more popular now, aesthetic dance, but it's just like all kinds of just like free movement to music, and it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful experience, and I think it's really really good to get out your energy through this kind of dancing. It's just like a free form dance, any movement that feels good with your body. And it's what, like 2 hours, Jared, or is it, how long is it?
Like an hour and a half. I mean, 2 hours if you count the opening and closing circle. You do like a little
Yeah.
like togetherness thing, and talk a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a powerful story in Ithaca. Um but yeah, I think we hit pretty much everything that I was hoping that we would talk about, unless there's you have any like closing thoughts or closing words that you want to say before we close up this wonderful podcast. And I hope to have you on again soon. We'll find other things. I mean, me and you could talk about spiritual things forever. Like we could go forever and ever and ever and talk about it, but I'm trying to keep my podcast to like around an hour, hour and a half, when I can, just because I feel like people's attention span can't go much further than that. No offense,
Yeah.
peeps.
Right. Um, thou art that. That's it. That's it. That's all anyone needs to focus on.
Well, Jared, I'm so happy that we got to do this podcast, and we will do another podcast soon. And I love you very much, friend.
I love
And I'm going to
you.
sign off.
All right, great. I will
Bye.
talk to you again soon.
Yep.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.